If you are a Lacanian, you are probably wondering how it is possible to get from the standard representation of the Borromean knot condition, the three rings that are stacked so that the top ring is also the bottom ring, no matter which ring we choose to be top, to this cross and circle relation. I did not invent this diagram. Lacan gives it to us in several places. Seminar 22, the RSI, and the shorter essay, La Troisième. He calls it a Brownian braid, and this is correct. But Iraj Guchani has noted that it is also the result of transforming the standard ring relations by means of what is called an inversion circle. Lacan is aware of the connection of this circle and cross to the inversion circle. We would like to take the next step. We would like to say that the inversion circle is critical in shaping the products of culture, from myths and rituals down to the arts of modernity and popular culture. The inversion circle condenses Lacan's idea of extimity, and extimity is central to his topology. But we should not look to mathematics to explain Lacan's topological thinking. We should look to ethnology. In Lacan's system of the three domains, we know that humans must measure and evaluate the things that happen around them, and this is one kind of stimulus. But we also know that there is another kind of stimulus that comes from errors and gaps in these attempts. We might say that these stimuli come from the other direction, although the stimulus is by definition something that always comes from an outside to an inside, even if that outside is inside the body. There is no way to resolve this directional conflict. It is a radical uncanny element which is impossible to say whether it is subjective or objective. It affects all relations where there are cuts in the continuum of phenomena, and it is primarily affective, emotional. This uncanny is like Goya's statement that the sleep of reason creates monsters. Gaps and mistakes in the symbolic that we cannot cover by fantasy are the real we call monsters. Not all inversion circles look like circles, but they all involve circularity with a twist. In this Magritte painting, the subject tries to complete a familiar kind of circle by seeing his mirror image face to face. But the mirror refuses to do this, and Magritte shows us exactly what's involved with orthogonal opposition. Lacan uses the interior 8 figure to show us how to cut a torus, but it is also another way to draw the inversion circle. Instead of completing the big circle, a little circle is drawn inside in the reverse direction. In the painting, this is the technique of putting an artwork inside an artwork. The book placed on the sill beneath the mirror lets us know that Magritte knows, that Poe knows, about the inversion circle as a misbehaving cut. This is Poe's novel about Arthur Gordon Pym, involving the literary technique of chiasmus, a fancy word for mirroring, where action flows in two directions at the same time, creating what is called instrumental convergence, a causality that is passive rather than active. Because the interior 8 is another kind of inversion circle, we can look at the cut, which is central to Lacan's thinking, as a means of rewriting his topology. The mirror image is not a reflection. The mirror cuts space into two left-right halves. One cut, two faces. This is space and time divided by the two orthogonalities, a space unique to speaking humans. The cut forces us to look at space from the inside. There is no outside. we must imagine an observer who combines the properties of non-orientation and self-intersection. This is actually like the Roman god Janus, but with a twist. In turning from one side to the other, the Janusian observer must also turn so that the two sides are identical and merge into one. The observer is critical. Without the Janusian insider, the cut could not exist. But it exists as a permanent uncanny. The Janusian observer sees things from both sides now, as in the song by Joni Mitchell. But he equalizes the turn involved, making 360 degrees equal to 180. This combination is what happens if we cut a bagel into two parts, in the same way Magritte's mirror cuts the subject into two parts. If we twist the knife 180 degrees as we complete a 360-degree turn, the circuit is completed, but it is non-orientable. The space between the two halves lies between two Mobius band faces, and this is the Janusian observer, the essence of subjectivity, put in terms of a torus with an interior 8 twist. The two orthogonalities come together here. The first completes the cut and is self-intersecting. The second, the 180-degree twist, puts a cut inside the cut and makes the space in between non-orientable. Another inversion circle happens with the famous L-schema, Lacan's model for the analytical session. Here the analyst plays the part of the Janusian observer, using the line Lacan labeled as the imaginary, a ping-pong game between little a and little a prime. You already know that the imaginary is basically the fantasy that covers over the contradictory relations of the real and the symbolic, which in the L-schema is the S and the unconscious, which is structured like a language, as you all know. The L-schema comes early in Lacan's thinking. We see it first in Seminar 2, 1954 and 55. Yet, even this early, the relation to the inversion circle is key, because what we have here is the inside view, the relation of the S to the unconscious, portrayed as an outside. What we normally think of as happening in the outside world, the imaginary relation of the subject to other subjects, is converted into an inside by focusing on what happens in analysis, where the egos of two people sitting in the same room exchange their little A's, their lacks, which for the analysand are the gaffes and bungled explanations that the analyst can receive only by giving the analysand little coughs or requests to return to something said before. Lacan says something interesting about the imaginary that forms a barrier in analysis to the unconscious as it attempts to break through to reach the S, the pre-subjective state, by means of a cipher. He says that the imaginary is sticky, and here we can understand how the little loop in the interior 8, the point where reason goes to sleep, creates viscosity out of what has appeared to be solid. This is the secret of the Janusian observer, who liquefies the interior space-time of discourse, and in the discourse of analysis creates the fluid exchange Lacan calls la langue, the blah 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 of the analysand, the coughs and murmurs, the hums and haws that the analyst ear is trained to pick up. The Janusian observer speaks la langue, which, as Freud taught, is always a case of double-speak. To explain this, let me make an outrageous claim that I have found the absolute minimum definition of the way two little a's are exchanged between the subject and the other in the toroidal relation of demand and desire. When Dracula, played by the famous Bela Lugosi, is offered a glass of wine, he refuses in a way that gives away his secret, that instead of wine he drinks blood to sustain his immortality, while depriving others of their mortality. It's a fixed-sum relation, a perfect ecology where there is no energy gained or lost. Yet it is a Lacanian ecology of symmetrical difference. We could even cut a bagel to show how it works. This example shows how the two orthogonalities work to create an extremity that is simultaneously a double circuit that, like the interior 8, keeps things moving by rotating in two directions at the same time. This popular cultural example suggests, ethnologically, that topology of the inversion circle is a way of talking about immortality and mortality, the dead who are actually alive, and the living who are actually dead, that is to say, mortal. This has a lot of applications. Let me briefly introduce you to another vampire, that is to say, a saint, Saint Jerome, who in this painting is striving to convert the mortal text of Greek, Aramaic, and Hebrew into an immortal Latin Vulgate Bible, with which he intends to bring everlasting life to all who read it, if only they will use the same principles of reading that he did of translating. The architectural frame around Jerome looks normal, except for the objects placed on the step, which work like a rebus encryption that is a test for us to see or not see what's really inside. I don't have time to explain how the partridge works here. I will let you Google it. I would only give you the hint that the Latin name for partridge is Perdix, and Perdix is the name of the nephew of Daedalus, the first architect who invented the labyrinth. Now you know how the painter Antonello da Messina made the frame work as an inversion circle. We know this because he makes it into an Oculus Dei, a frame by which God is looking at Jerome. Again, the immortal who is dead but doesn't know it, who is looking at the mortal who is living but doesn't know he's dead. In this exchange of the two objets A, the other and the subject create an inversion circle that guarantees that the mortal text will have the power of the divine word, which is the aim of every religious text, to be the word of God in a non-interpretive sense. My last example is funnier and less serious, a better way to tie up a talk. In the L-schema, the return to the S is not something weird. It can be the way, in a joke or comedy, something that already exists but has been suppressed emerges thanks to a twist made in time or space. In the Charlie Chaplin film, The Circus, Chaplin is running away from the policeman. Quite a good way of describing the ping-pong structure of the diagonal line connecting the exchange of objet petit a, that is the imaginary of the L-schema. The other, the policeman, is in charge because he is the motive for Chaplin's running, his change of location. But Chaplin here is playing the part of the analyst, who can change things only by altering the structure of space and time, which is why we see Charlie check his watch when he has converted the chaser into the chasee. This device of non-orientation will allow the tramp to relocate the big other and put a bar across him. The bar is the same as the diagonal in the L-schema, and it is the same as the lower left part of the fundamental polygon of the torus where instrumental convergence will take place. This film clip is a picture of instrumental convergence. It is also an inversion circle, and we can find many more such examples in popular culture and the arts to make this point. The turntable allows Chaplin to find his non-orientation. The more he runs away from the policeman, the more he runs towards him, the back of him, however. Facing the back of the policeman in this non-orientable way, he is able to put a bar across the big other. And to show that this is a matter of timing, Chaplin pulls out his pocket watch to check the time, as if to show us that he knows very well that the imaginary is a ping-pong game where timing is everything. It's time for me to wrap things up, and I just want to remind you that in relating Lacan's topology to non-orientation and the self-intersecting double circuits, we have used inversive geometry to show how the orthographic angle works in a ratio of 2 to 1. This simplification is justified because it opens up Lacan's theories to ethnographic conditions, where it is quite easy to find and investigate inversive geometry, because the frame of both ethnological events and the products of the arts and popular culture are essentially inversion circles. When Shakespeare says, "All the world's a stage," this is literally true, in the sense that the world would not be the world without the cut, which we should more accurately call the insertion of a non-orientable void that creates the condition of inversion by which we relocate and reorient the big other, which is the substance and function of our own alienation, the diagonal bar that crosses the S, that is our pre-subjective, pre-symbolic self. I see I am at my time limit, so I will stop here and see if you have any questions. Thanks for the opportunity to talk about the orthographic cut.